Several months ago, we had the opportunity as a community to submit an application to the National Disaster Resiliency Competition put on by the Department of Housing and Urban Development. And part of that competition was done in order to make sure that we address nationwide some of the unmet needs of the communities that were affected by disasters in 2011, 2012, and 2013. And so Minot was one of 67 named applicants that could apply. And we did that. We submitted the first phase of our application. We did that by the end of March of a few months ago. We were successful, and now Minot is one of 40 applicants that moved on to phase 2. HUD announced in late June the fact that we've been selected for phase 2 of this competition. Initially, there were 67 communities or states or geographic areas that were named. There's 40 of those that went on to phase 2, 40. So Minot was one of those 40 places. But we know that we have great ideas here in Minot. We know that we can win, even we're competing against New Orleans and Chicago and New York City and some of these other large cities. We have great ideas here too. Minot's the smallest city in the United States that is part of this competition, but also the one with the biggest heart and the one that is poised to win. And so, in my humble opinion, this is ours to lose. So during the first phase of this competition, we had 14 public meetings. For all of you that attended one of those public meetings, I want to express my thanks to you, because it's because of the public meetings that we had and because of the large amount of community input and involvement that we got in phase 1 of this competition that we were successful. And more than any one thing that HUD noted in our application was the level of community involvement that we got here in Minot, North Dakota. When we did this the last time before we submitted the application, as many of you recall, it was in February. It was about 30 below zero, and now it's about 100. So we did a 130 degree temperature swing, and you all still came out, so I just wanted to thank you for doing that. When the mayor and I have an opportunity to speak to people in the public, we tell them that we do 3 things better than anybody else. We provide for the world, we power the world, and we protect the world. We provide for the world because of our agricultural base. We power the world because of the fact that we have a great petroleum base here as well. And we also protect the world. If you think of the strategic importance of Minot Air Force Base, it has 2 legs of the nuclear triad of the United States. Very, very important. We are the only applicant that can say that. We are the only applicant that has an international component of that because of our relationships to the Canadians to our north. And so part of what we're doing is making sure that we have and develop solutions that are going to be acceptable both here in Minot and throughout the entire Source River Basin as well. But that's really the theme of what we're trying to show you tonight and what we presented in Denver. So what we did in phase 1, we had to come up with a vision for our community. And what we said was, in addition to recovering from the flood, and then also in addition to making sure that we mitigate the risks of future disasters, we need to make sure that we develop a resilient protection system for the city. We need to make sure that we look at affordable housing. That's one of the #1 issues that's facing our community. When you talk to the folks at the Air Base, when you talk to major employers such as Trinity Hospital, or you talk to anybody that has a business here, trying to make sure that they can attract and retain a quality workforce and affordable to them is a very difficult thing. We needed more resilient transportation, and for all of you that submitted ideas to us, transportation was reiterated over and over and over again. A diverse and resilient economy, because as you all know, because we're feeling it right now, when one of the 3 legs of the economy, hiccups, what happens is it affects all of us. So we need to make sure that as we continue to grow our city, to make sure that we work to try to diversify our economy. And then finally, the most important is really help those who need it, which is really the vulnerable populations. And sometimes when I use that term and say that these are the folks that are vulnerable, people think of just the folks that were in the flood of 2011. Well, it is those folks, but it's also the folks that are living on fixed income. It's the homeless people that we have in the community. It's those people that are elderly, that are sometimes living on a very limited income as well. We have to consider the fact that we need to provide housing for the Minot State University students, because a lot of those students lost housing during the flood of 2011, and the university has not recovered from that yet. So what we have to do in phase 2 is we have to get very specific on what we're going to do. We need to make sure that we submit something to HUD that is competitive. So during those 14 meetings that we have in phase 1, what we did was we got a lot of input from the community, and we said, well, what do you think we should do as we continue to recover and rebuild our city in a resilient manner? We got lots and lots and lots of ideas. And over the course of time, what we're able to do is massage those ideas and try to dovetail them into one another to say that, well, here's about 18 to 20 things that the community repetitively has come up with. And then what we need to do, and the team that's putting this approach together, is we need to put all that into one vision, and then we need to outline to HUD that says, this is where our community's headed, these are the things that we need to do to continue to recover, and this is what we want you to pay for. Because we have to outline the entire vision to make sure that people in the community understand that we haven't forgotten a portion of what we need to do. But it's because of the fact that HUD's not going to pay for that. So what we're addressing in phase 2 is that vision that we had from phase 1, but specifically we're asking the federal government, we understand that we want to do these 10 or 12 things. But then the federal government's going to come back and say, you know, that's a great idea, Minot, North Dakota, but we're only willing to pay for number 1, number 6, number 10. That's great. That's 3 things that we don't have to do, because we'll be able to get federal funds for that. So when we submit our application, it needs to be scalable in the fact that the federal government needs to look at it and say, well, if you're asking for $100 million or $150 million and we're only able to give you 75, can you still do the program? The answer to the question has to be yes. So we made a lot of progress in flood recovery. The first 3 phases of that will start in 2017. But this competition is about doing more than rebuild. It's to make our community better. When I had the opportunity to walk through the city with Miranda a few weeks ago, you know, and she's, like I said, she's on the city council. She said, Lee, what we really lost, we've lost property, but we lost our neighborhood. We lost our community. The feeling that we used to have by living here, that's gone. We need to get that community feeling back. And so I took her passion and tried to figure out how we build that into what we're saying we're going to do. And when we write our application, we need to create that community and that neighborhood that all of you who went through that flood lost. That's what we need to create. It's not just about building new homes. It's about creating that community and rebuilding that community and rebuilding that neighborhood. And that's what this competition is about. This place is not the same as it was before the flood. And how do we create that? How do we make sure the fact that if we're giving people an opportunity to move, or we're telling them that we need them to move because of this reason or that reason, we can recreate that neighborhood. So what this shows is the fact that as we buy up property in those little green areas, and the 2 boxes down in downtown, that's the first micro community that we're going to create. And then you see one that's located on the north part of the city and one on the south part of the city. But it's really all centered around this concept. And so as we relocate and we move people into the downtown and we bring businesses and other opportunity into the downtown, what we're creating is that micro community where people understand the fact that they can go to this place and this is what their neighborhood's going to look like. We've taken a lot of time to try to develop more detail in this, and I'll show you this in a second. So this is, first part of this is downtown revitalization, mixed-use concept for housing. We're going to increase our city transit system. That's addressed in the 2016 budget. So we can do that in different locations. And finally, we're going to relocate City Hall. City Hall is in the floodplain right now. It was affected by the anhydrous ammonia spill back in the early 2000s. And so that's a critical piece of infrastructure that needs to be moved. So we're going to leave the police station there, but everything else out of City Hall, we're going to move into the downtown area and all the other support facilities, because I've had several people that have asked me, You know, it's very confusing because if you're new to the community and you ask who does this, and it's a support service, you kind of wonder who does it, and everybody gives you the runaround, and so all of a sudden you're driving all over Minot trying to figure out who does it. But if you could locate all those facilities into one location, it would be better for the community. So that's what we're going to do. Okay, we're going to create a Riverfront Greenway. This depicts Roosevelt Park to Oak Park. And as the flood protection gets built and as property gets acquired and we move those people out, what we're going to do is, this is really part of the original Riverfront and Center plan of the community. But what we want to do is we want to make sure that we create an opportunity for people to embrace the fact that we have a river system going through the city as opposed to just fearing the fact that we have a river go through the city. So what does that mean? It means we're going to have walking and biking paths, all season activities along that, covered rest shelters, and then also what it does, it provides the addition of water storage and retention. So if you go through the engineering piece of this and you look at what properties you're going to buy out, what's the value to you doing that, you can gain a lot of value. And all this goes into the benefit cost analysis that we need to submit to HUD. Okay, we're going to have a public gathering space. The first of these will be created in the downtown area. Most people have asked during our public meetings is, where does our community call home? And we're going to create this downtown. We're going to create a gathering space that we can use year-round. We can put people in there, and I think it'll be a lovely place for the community to come together. And as I said before, this is the first of these. We want to do 3. The first one in the downtown community, and we will have one on the north side of the city, one on the south side of the city as well. But when we submit this, we have to say, well, who's going to operate and maintain that? What's going to be the long-term cost of this? And where's this going to be? So all of this is now being included as part of our application, and you'll see when you read the application, when we post it online in a few weeks, you'll be able to see the detail of this. The neighborhood concept that I talked about, different types of housing in there, but really it's an opportunity for people to live, work, and play all in the same area. We want to be able to provide those folks that are living on a fixed income, to provide some of our elderly folks that maybe want to live in a more of a community type of atmosphere, an opportunity to do just that. This is another an architectural concept of how that could be done. That doesn't require any explanation, but again, as we go through this iterative process, we'll provide more and more clarity because that's what we have to do in order to provide the benefit cost analysis of doing this. When we ask people what does that neighborhood look like, there's 2 slides of this. I won't speak to any of those, but this is what everybody said. This is what they miss in their community. So we've gone through our areas that were devastated, and we've taken some pictures and some photos of what the neighborhood is. So we can try to recreate that someplace else as opposed to just putting up more tract housing and more places that people say, well, I want my house to look like a home as opposed to just like everybody else's that lives next door to me on the left and the right and across the street. You know, how do we do that? Okay, why we need to support the application? We have made a lot of progress since the flood recovery. Sometimes when I speak publicly, somebody said, well, you know, I haven't seen any flood protection go up, I haven't seen this, haven't seen that. You're exactly correct. There are a lot of things that still have to be done. But when I sat down with the community in a couple weeks ago during a community meeting, and I said, tell me what we've done, we started listing those things. We came up with 19 things that have been drastically changed since the flood of 2011. I tell folks publicly that if I can't figure out a better way in order to take you out of harm's way, in order to make sure that I address your needs, so that for the next 15 to 20 years while the flood protection system is developed, that you don't have to wonder every night in springtime, is my house going to flood again next week? Then I haven't done my job. And it's my responsibility, it's the elected officials' responsibilities, Jim Hatlett, the other folks on the city council, in order to make sure that we do this. But we need the community support in order to make sure that we're successful. And we will be. Because if there's one issue that I know that keeps me awake at night or thoughts while running, which is, because I think I run more than I sleep, it's making sure the fact that we address the needs of the community and the people that were affected from the flood. and to make sure that we do what we can in order to make sure that we decrease their level of anxiety so that they don't have to worry that their home's going to flood again this spring. So what's next? We have to submit the application by the 27th of October. Basically, I have to have it written by the 1st of October. 1st of October, I need to post it on the city's website. I need to give you all 2 weeks to look at our application, to grade our paper before I send it to the federal folks to do that. Please take an opportunity to do that. You grade our paper, then I have about 10 days in order to address your comments and send it back to HUD, and I got to do that by the 27th. And then about 3 months later, we'll hear. And in January, I am convinced the fact that we'll be successful. We actually have the opportunity to win, I think, a large amount of money and to help rebuild our community to the better. Regardless of our level of success, I firmly believe that with the support of you all and everybody else, that our community is headed in the right direction. And I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak today. And with that, I'm done, because we provide, power, and protect. That's it.